Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. I'm a 28-year-old male and I've grown up in an orphanage. I've always had a deep inner desire to know my biological parents since their identity and my past has always been a mystery to me. I only knew that I had been brought into the orphanage when I was 4. I have no memory of what my life was like before. I only knew my experiences in the orphanage and later in life. So, as I grew older, I became more curious about my parents and my past. I met my wife when we were both in university. For the first time in my life, I felt a familial feeling like I belonged somewhere. Because of my experiences throughout my life, I found it hard to forge bonds with people, and our relationship wasn't smooth sailing. However, we managed to deal with everything like adults and stayed strong throughout the entire relationship. There were times when I felt like we wouldn't last, but we did. And when I finally proposed, she was ecstatic. When I met her mother, I was really excited to know that she grew up in my hometown, since that was one of the few pieces of information I still had about my past. And I felt that since she grew up there, she could help me to find information about my parents. I didn't bring this up with her immediately, though. I knew that this could dampen the mood, and I wanted to focus on my upcoming marriage and my soon to be wife. Her family had accepted me completely, making me feel like I have a place to call home for the first time in my life. After years of being alone and not having anyone to be there for me, it was a relief to be able to depend on someone and have emotional support. They quickly made me a part of their family, and I truly felt like I belonged among them. I couldn't have been luckier to have such a considerate wife and in laws. Sometimes I couldn't help but feel that perhaps my wife got the short end of the stick. Perhaps she deserved more than I could give her. Present in laws who could contribute equally to a lavish wedding as the one her parents were paying for. She deserved a good family to be married into, and all she got was me with no information about my background, just knowing the names of my parents. I even asked her about it at times, but she was always quick to reassure me that it never mattered all that much to her. What mattered was that I was a good person and could keep her happy. 2 years into our marriage, I decided to nervously broach the subject of my mother-in-law's childhood and its relation to my parents, to my wife. She completely understood and sympathized with me, and since my hometown was a small one, she promised to ask my mother-in-law if she had any information about my parents at all. I was reassured by her promise, even though it didn't seem like much, because it was something at least. After years of having absolutely no clue, maybe I was one step closer to solving the mystery. My wife kept her word and contacted my mother-in-law that very evening to ask her about my parents. She told us apologetically that she had no information, but she told us that she had a friend who could look at the past records of the public school in her hometown and let us know, because if my parents grew up in the town, they would have attended that school sometime in the past. I wasn't holding out too much hope, but I acknowledged that she was doing a lot for me, and it wasn't something I could ever repay. She, out of kindness of her heart, had decided to go above and beyond to help me find my parents. She told me it was nothing, but it meant a lot to me that she was willing to invest time in this hopeless endeavor only to satisfy my curiosity. Perhaps she realized how much this meant to me, how much I needed this closure. Whatever the reason, she contacted her friend the very next day and promised to get the information to me in a few months. After 7 months had passed, I decided to ask my mother-in-law once again about my parents. She behaved suspiciously innocent as she said that she still had no information. I could tell that something was wrong, but I was unwilling to confront her at this point. What I couldn't understand was why she would keep information about my parents from me, especially after knowing how important this was to me. I tried to tell my wife that my mother-in-law was hiding something from me, but she got incredibly offended, and not wanting it to escalate into a fight, I apologized and took back my words. I knew that something was fishy here, but I couldn't jump straight into accusations with no proof. I had to subtly broach the subject instead of being confrontational. Perhaps she had a good reason for hiding information from me. I couldn't take it any longer after 3 more months and told her that I knew she was hiding something from me, and I understood that maybe it was to protect me. But I was an adult. She denied it at first, but then she admitted it, telling me that some things were better left unknown, and maybe I was lucky to not remember anything about my past or my parents at all. I was honestly confused and rather hurt at this because she knew how much it hurts me that I know nothing about my parents and how hard I find it to belong anywhere or fit in any group because I know nothing about my past. Her saying something as insensitive as this was hurtful to me, and I honestly told her that this wasn't something I had ever expected from her. It has been a few months since this happened, and neither of us are as comfortable with each other as we used to be once upon a time. My wife understands that something happened, but I'm unwilling to hurt her by saying anything about my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, seems hurt but determined to keep the information from me. Since she is the only person who has the information that would help me, I feel rather betrayed. Maybe I would have understood if she gave any reasons for her behavior, but she gave none. This goes against everything I had once believed her to be. I hope that things can get settled between us soon, but it cannot happen unless she tells me the reason for her behavior. She is being unnecessarily hurtful, and I hope that she realizes that. I had considered her to be my family, but family doesn't behave like this. I hope we go back to our previous bonding soon. So I was rather traumatized today, and because of my own actions, I cannot blame anyone else. It was all me. My mother-in-law had apparently been scolded by my wife, and she was getting stressed out because of my disagreement with her mother. She had requested my mother-in-law to talk to me and make up with me because it was hurting her to see the two people she loved the most in the world not get along with each other. My mother-in-law felt guilty for hurting her only child like this and agreed that maybe she needed to have an open conversation with me instead of having a disagreement for no reason. My wife set up a time for both of us to talk and threatened me to do my best to make up with my mother-in-law. Honestly, I was feeling rather guilty at this point, as if I had blown things out of proportion, so I was ready to do whatever it takes to settle things between us. I realized that the way I had reacted was not mature at all, and I should have kept my patience and told her to tell me the truth instead of blowing up. When the day for us to meet rolled by, I was feeling nervous, but I was ready with an apology because I knew that my mother-in-law was a good woman and genuinely did care about me. When she came to meet me, we both apologized, and she told me that she realized I was not a child. She shouldn't be trying to protect me from anything because that only made things worse. She regretted not giving me a proper reason as to why she wouldn't tell me about my parents, but now she was willing to undo her mistake. She asked me multiple times if I was certain that I wanted the information about my parents because it might not be to my liking. I told her that even if my parents were some kind of criminals, I wanted to know about them because I had lived my entire life knowing nothing about them. She seemed a little disappointed with my answer, but agreed to send me all the information about my parents the very next day. She told me multiple times that I should be prepared since the information was extremely unappealing, but I had been preparing my entire life for this. I told her that no matter what the information was, I needed it. She agreed and told me to call her if I needed any kind of emotional support and that my past doesn't believe me. Today, ever since I woke up, I've been feeling uneasy. I kept thinking about the information that my mother-in-law was going to deliver to me today. I was prepared for any kind of horrible news, but I still kept feeling uneasy because if the information was bad enough that my mother-in-law didn't want to tell me about it, it was scaring me. Still, I was determined, and the moment her package delivered to me, I sat down to open it, knowing that my life could change now. I was ready. I was not ready. What I read from the files which were in the package were not something I had genuinely expected at all. I saw my parents for the first time, realized how they looked. They became more concrete beings in my mind instead of faceless figures. Then I found a new clipping about them, and what I read is going to haunt my dreams. I had expected them to have something dodgy in their past, but this was beyond my imagination. I had never expected something as disgusting as this. My father had schizophrenia and always mistrusted everything around him. He had occasional frenzied fits when he would become dangerous to everyone. During one such fit, he had murdered my mother and then himself. I had survived and been found in a pool of blood. I realized then why my mother-in-law considered me lucky for not remembering my past. I was glad to have the information, but gladder to have someone like my mother-in-law who would go to such great lengths to protect me. The mother-in-law should have just come clean instead of creating such a mess of misunderstandings. OP might have overreacted a little, but that's understandable. I'm glad OP has mother-in-law and his wife now. Honestly, OP overreacted. He shouldn't have stopped talking to mother-in-law. Mother-in-law was more of a mother to OP than OP's parents had ever been. I hope OP is doing well now. My family is from Mexico, but I was born in the US. I am the only one in my family who doesn't speak Spanish. All my extended family, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, etc., speak it, but I never really cared for it that much. Katia, my girlfriend, knows I'm Mexican and she asked if I spoke Spanish, but when I said no, she didn't push, which I found refreshing. Usually people ask a lot of questions. She never said she spoke Spanish, but I remember her watching something and hearing Spanish, but I figured she had subtitles on. If it's important, Kate is from Germany. Katya and I have been together for 3 months. It's not long, but it's been intense. My grandmother had birthday on Saturday, and my family threw her a huge party. I invited Katya to come along with me as it would be perfect time to meet my family, and they're always very welcoming. Katya agreed. When we got there, everyone switched to English to speak to Katya, but they quickly went back to Spanish. I went to grab a beer and came back to find Katya talking to my aunt in Spanish. I came over and played it cool, telling her I didn't know that she spoke it, yada yada. When Katya was with me, she spoke English, but whenever she spoke to one of my family members alone, she switched because they switched. It made me really uncomfortable, especially since it wasn't your typically barely spoken Spanish. It was full on, fluent Spanish, and she understood my fast speaking relatives. I got really annoyed with her, but said nothing. My grandma told me how much she loved Katya and how she's happy I found such an amazing girl. All my family loved her and couldn't stop singing praises about her. On our way back, I got really angry with her, and when we got to my apartment, I told her that I feel betrayed that she hid that she spoke Spanish and how she made a fool of me out there. I admit I was shouting because I was so angry. I felt humiliated. She asked me to calm down and told me that she never hid anything. I accused her of sneakily making her way into my family instead of having them warm up gradually. She asked if I was being serious, and I confirmed. She called me a jerk and left my apartment. I was too angry to stop her. I'm waiting for her to call me with apologies, but she hasn't been in touch since Saturday night. I told my brother about it, and he's told me that I am the fool. But I really feel disrespected by Katya. AITA for getting angry and shouting. She hid she spoke my language. YTA, it sounds to me like you are more jealous of the fact that she can speak Spanish. Maybe do some digging on your own insecurities before getting upset with your girlfriend over being bilingual. She asked you if you spoke Spanish and you don't. So she didn't have to speak it around you. If I were you, I'd be more than thrilled that she was able to communicate with your family in what I'm assuming is a lot of their first language. She wasn't hiding this big secret or doing it to be malicious or hurt you. OP, how can it be your language if you do not speak it? She asked if you spoke it. You said no. She dropped it. Did you ask if she spoke Spanish? Most Europeans speak 2 to 5 languages and are taught 2 besides their own in school. YTA, she does not owe you anything. YTA, forget the language aspect, of which you never actually asked, but accusing her of sneakily making her way into your family? What does that even mean? If you truly like her, you should be happy that they do too. You're projecting your personal family issues onto her, and it may make you lose the relationship. My husband and I have 2 kids, Ryder, 21, male, and Juliet, 16, female. Both of them are close to both set of grandparents and visit them regularly. Juliet is discovering her style, and she's experimenting with clothes, hairstyles, and makeup. Ryan gave her a sew machine last month, and she kind of went nuts with this, doing a lot of pieces for fun. Since Julie is still a minor, we set a few rules because we believe that even when she's expressing herself, there's still things that she shouldn't wear, like no see-through things, no large cleavage, and no minis. She's always mixing colors, patterns, prints, and textures, pants under skirts, dresses as cardigans, big earrings and necklaces, etc. Sometimes it does feel too much, but that's just fashion, isn't it? She seems happy, and we don't think it's fair to call her outfits ugly when she's just having fun and experimenting. She still tones it down when it comes to family gatherings because she's afraid people will say something. It's important to add that Ryder 100% supports and encourages his sister. Most of the funny jewelry that Julie owns are things that Ryder bought for her. And as I said, he gave her a sewing machine recently. She also makes him shirts and is trying to make him a jacket. Yesterday was Ryder's 21st birthday, and we decided to have a small party just with family. Julie asked Ryder what his theme was so that she could dress accordingly, but he said that she could dress however she wanted, and I swear you could see Julie's eyes sparkle. She ended up wearing a weird combination, but looked happy, and Ryder said she looks pretty. As soon as everyone starts to come, they eye Julie, but nobody says anything. I notice my father-in-law making a face, and when he wants to give Ryder a few words, he says, "It's time to address the elephant in the room. Juliet looks awful. Go change to normal clothes, little girl." Ryder just rolls his eyes and says that a 70-year-old man bullying a 16-year-old is pathetic. They start to fight, and my father-in-law demands I punish my son, but my husband and I refuse. He made Julie cry. NTA, shame on your father-in-law. It sounds like you're doing everything right to me and your kid sounds wonderful. Keep doing what you're doing. ETA, your son is 21. I don't think grounding him for an argument between him and another adult would be appropriate anyway. Your father-in-law is just angry that he got called out for his poor behavior. NTA, your son was defending his sister. Your father-in-law was acting pathetic, and nothing that you said was wrong. Not only that, but how does he expect you to ground or punish a 21-year-old man? He's an adult. He can voice his opinions and grievances without worrying about being reprimanded. Father-in-law needs to grow up.